Let me tell you a story, just a little light story about a very common figure in Jewish folklore. His name was Hershel. And for those of you who know who Hershel was, he's the guy who managed to get himself into and out of trouble all the time. Usually with a little bit of wit and tricksterism to him. For example, one time he was selling a blank canvas as the authentic picture of the Israelites leaving Egypt. And when people said, "Why is it blank?" he said, "Because they're gone." All right, so he's that kind of a fellow. The story I'd like to tell tonight is one about his interactions with a fellow who was a terrible, terrible miser. And this fellow was known throughout his community as just being so miserly, so miserable. He would sit on a rough wooden bench rather than sit on an upholstered thing that might wear it out because, he didn't want to waste anything. And Hershel decided he had to somehow get some money from this guy. Nobody had been able to do it. And he came up with a plan. So he went up to the miser one day and he said, I'm really an amazing polisher of silver. If you will give me some of your silver to polish, then I'll return it to you the next day and you'll be very pleased. And in fact, I'm so sure you'll be pleased, I won't charge you until I return it to you. And then if you like it, you can pay me. Well, the miser knew who Hershel was and wasn't exactly ready to part with any of his silver for Hershel, but Hershel persisted, and finally he found the smallest sugar spoon that he could find. And he said, "Okay, here you go, but bring it back tomorrow and it better look good." So Hershel takes it, he goes away, and the next day he comes back with that sugar spoon, very, very nicely polished, and a little tiny silver spoon next to it. And the miser looks at it and he says, "Well, I just gave you the one. You did a nice job, true, but what's this little one?" He said, "Oh, it had a baby." Well, the miser's kind of like, "Yeah, right." And Hershel says, "Well, could I do something maybe a little bigger this time?" And the miser says, "Well, okay." And he did come back with the teaspoon, with the sugar spoon. So he gives him a soup spoon. Says, "Okay, try this. See what you can do." Hershel comes back the next day. He's got the soup spoon, beautifully polished, and 2 teaspoons. The miser looks and says, "What's this?" It had twins. Okay, the miser's, all right, I'm okay. He says, "This is really working out well for me." He goes into his cabinet and he pulls out the 2 finest silver candlesticks he owns. And he gives them to Hershel and he says, "Now, tomorrow I want these back, and if, something should happen, that would be nice." And Hershel says, "I got it." He took the 2 candlesticks directly to the market, sold them for as much money as he could, made back what he spent on the little spoon and the 2 teaspoons, and tried to haul away. Well, the miser was kind of watching out for him, and the next morning, as Hershel's getting ready to leave, the miser grabs him and says, "Where are my candlesticks? What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I didn't know how to tell you, but they died." And the miser says, "No, wait a minute, that doesn't," and he hauls him into court. And he says to the judge, "Judge, you'll never believe, he took these 2 candlesticks from me and he told me that they had died and now he won't give them back." And the judge turns to the miser and says, "What do you mean they died? What does that have to do with anything?" And the miser says, "Well, I gave him a sugar spoon and he told me it had a baby and it brought back a smaller spoon. And I brought him a soup spoon and he brought back 2 teaspoons. He said they had twins. So, I naturally thought that if I get," the judge says, "if you're foolish enough to believe that a soup spoon can give birth, then you have to accept that candlesticks can die. And that's the story of Hershel and the miser.